Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, it's rather sad and contradictory that side proposition claims they want to be able to help and empower women in the movement, but at the same breath tell these women to, hey sis, get a better job. We've already told you that number one, these women who exercise these things and enjoy these pursuits can be empowered by that and are part of the movement. And number two, coming from Matthew and Brent, implied that these things can be actualizing. Obviously, in a vacuum, women might not want to, on average, choose these things, but there are many content creators and sex workers who I talked about who are making the most out of this situation and being able to exercise and empower their own kind of identity so that they don't have to feel disgusted and dirty, and as a consequence are literally able to redefine what it means to be a woman and to exercise your own identity in that manner. To judge this debate, it's really about the strategy of the movement. Should they oppose it or not? But we need to understand, as what we've told you from the beginning that they haven't really responded to, is that this evolves, this is not a monolith, and ultimately, we don't want to be able to force and define a singular standard, because if they're not fine with the trad wife thing, then I'm not entirely necessarily sure how doing this thing, which is sort of like telling them that they have to obey and do a particular way and act in a particular way, is justified. The biggest push they had is an assertion that men will get upset, it's anti-women, and it's unfair. But we need to ask ourselves, how does opposing this narrative really particularly look like? And we think that when you oppose it, it's not necessarily clear how you're able to solve the problems that they accuse our side of on their side, because there simply was no delta, there simply was no comparative. That is why the point of information I mentioned in terms of these kinds of women being part of the movement is proof that there is a degree of intersectionality that needs to happen when we're able to not oppose it and allow these things to be done in a better and safer way. Because, right, government is right that these things are quite symmetric, and we think a lot of the call-outs they had to us were going to be symmetric. Things like, oh, men are going to react in this way, etc., etc. We think, and we told you, which are unresponded material coming from our side of the house, coming from me, we talked about how the definition of intersectionality can evolve and how this particularly can be an encompassing kind of narrative for them to experience more things and exercise their identity. Number two, we got alternatives from Matt, mechanisms of which there were no response. He talked about how they can leave these particularly toxic relationships when they're able to not be seen as someone who can be used, but can be someone who can also use as well and is necessarily exercising their agency. He also talked about how women can also explore these things because you don't know what you don't know. And in many instances, like what I mentioned in my framing, if you're conservative or because of the birth lottery, you weren't experienced in these particular things, allow you a chance to be able to experience it without necessarily being worried about how society will react. Thirdly, Brent was able to talk about the deadlock, in which he was able to talk about and explain by the lens of looking at this does not solely have to be from a conservative kind of lens. There are multiple kinds of lenses. And in terms of an overall strategy on our side, it becomes a safer, a healthier, and better way for women to be able to exercise their identity amidst the backdrop of a double standard we've already seen for far too long. We are very proud to stand on our side of the house. Thanks.